Pete Stone, Managing Partner here at Sionic, and I wear two hats in terms of my formal roles. One is the Managing Partner accountable for our L&D practice, our Learning and Development practice, and my second hat is Chief Strategy Officer, which for the last 2 or 3 years has meant that I am the individual accountable for the development of our strategy and then ensuring that it is executed in accord with what we want. And a key feature of that for the last 18 months has been our M&A activity. So I've been taking the lead in our M&A work. You shift people's mindsets in a couple of ways. One of the ways is, and it comes back to, at our core, we're a consulting organisation. So as a consultant, you can't avoid the issue. You've got to tell them. You've got to have a point of view. So if the way they are behaving and the way they are operating is incongruent with the result they're trying to get, you have a duty to show them that. So for example, if a senior person presents to another senior person and says the program is green, and they say, "Oh, fantastic, it's green," then I'm happy with that. Actually, that's not going to get you the result you want. So we have a duty to show them and say, how do you know it's green? Why are you not being more curious? Where's your confidence coming from? So there's a whole raft of things that you do that start from the position of give them an honest prod and an honest poke. And that really raises their awareness of, oh, there's a different way to be. The next stage you do is you show them in practical terms what different behaviour looks like. So you might say in that example, look, when presented with a green status on a programme which affects your mindset, here are 5 questions you might ask. So let's now work through a scenario. Ask these questions now in that scenario. So they ask those questions, and then so how did that feel to ask those questions? How did it feel when you got the responses? So it's holding their hand through the shift of the mindset, but turning the behavioural requirements into practical reality in the context in which it's relevant. And it's consistently showing them. There's a shift that people have to make, which is, if I'm a leader in an organisation, I can't sit there and say, I get it, I can do it, but the bank stops me, or the bank doesn't let me. So my response to people who say that, for example, is the bank doesn't exist. The bank is a legal entity. It sits on a document in a safe somewhere in a legal office. The bank is you. So you have to realise that you create the culture, you make the change, people follow you. So there's a challenge around people not being a victim but taking responsibility. That's one challenge. When they take responsibility, another great challenge that they have, certainly the folks I deal with, is a feeling of being overwhelmed because they've got significant amounts of business change that's driven by the commercial performance of a bank, for example, significant amounts of regulatory change that's coming either domestically or internationally from the regulators, and significant amounts of technology change that's coming from the various sources of disruption, whether it's the data sciences, machine learning, artificial intelligence, the digital agenda, and they're having to cope with all of kind of these demands and pressures when it could be that they're just an accountant. I grew up in finance as an accountant, and now I'm expected to lead all of this, or I grew up as an operations person. And so that multitude of pressures that they get, and then overlay that with, I work in banking, and all the sort of societal pressures that creates, because you're a pariah if you work in banking these days. So specialism for us means that we have individuals in our consulting organisation who have expertise in all the relevant domains in banking and asset and wealth management, front to back. And the expertise has been gained by practicing in the industry. They've worked in banks, they've worked in asset managers, they've worked in wealth managers, they've worked in investment banking and capital markets. So that expertise, what that gives you is credibility with your client. So when you've got the credibility with the client, you're on the way to gaining some trust. So if we can empathise with all of these pressures that clients are facing, and it doesn't have to be the senior leaders, it can be the middle managers, but that ability to get empathy, which comes from you being credible because you've worked in the industry, that makes a big difference. And we believe with a passion that we're not faced with a huge amount of competition in terms of going after that space of providing specialism. The big 4 and the big 6, they can't provide it. They provide scale but not specialism. The contract market can provide individual degrees of specialism, but it can't do it at scale. If we can provide both, then we become our own challenge really in terms of how we bring it out and how we make sure we get that to the client.